Hello and welcome to today's edition of the Wealthy Lightworker. I am so excited to share Michael Emery with you all. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you.
So Michael is coming to us from Santiago, Chile. He specializes in personal development coaching. He is an executive coach, a business coach, and he helps entrepreneurs. And he is a specialist in neurolinguistic programming and Ericksonian hypnosis. So you might have to dumb some stuff down for us today, Michael, but I'm so excited here. He's going to share some slides with us and his incredible program called the Empowered Muse we'll talk about at the end. But before we jump in, why don't we go ahead and take a deep breath together. Okay, so now that we are here in this moment, Michael, could you tell us just a little bit about when you realized that you were a light worker, when you kind of came to start yourself on this journey?
Wow, I wasn't expecting that question. That would take me a ways back. I grew up in a very religious family. So my mom was a very devout Catholic when I was born. I believe I was baptized into the Catholic Church. And at some point there was this change, and she converted up or over, I don't know how it would be, to becoming a Protestant, a Baptist. And I remember being in that environment, and then that church that my parents attended became evangelical, which was crazy stuff. They would have missionaries from Africa. They would have people that had seen or experienced weird stuff. And I mean, I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole. I mean, we could talk about like demonic possession and all kinds of like crazy stuff where you're just like going, wow, I was living in like the TV show Supernatural or something. I don't know. And so there was this very, from a very young age, I was exposed to this environment where there was a part of me that was like, okay, I personally perceive a contrast or a kind of a never-ending battle or tension between light and darkness. And from a young age, it was very clear to me that what side I was on. And I think there was also influences like reading J.R.R. Tolkien as a child, Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, and Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis.
Yeah.
Those had very formative, empowering messages for me, and helped me to define what I wanted to do with my life. And then the rest of the process is, one of extracting myself from a fundamental religion and separating spirituality from religion and learning about myself. And that was a whole different path. And so, yeah, it was a very young age, I would say, probably around 6 to 7 years old.
Wow.
I wasn't expecting that question.
Wow. So that young, and you've kind of been on that journey ever since. Would you say that it's been a straight shot, or has it kind of taken you?
No, not whatsoever. There were a couple of monumental events, I would say. First was going to after high school. I was a relatively good kid in high school. I mean, the focus for my class was mostly sports and academics. And so, I tried to do the best I could. And that was a lot of just the cultural programming. You need to be a good athlete. You need to be a good student. You need to get into a college or a university. So that way you can become a professional, and, you just keep following these steps. Nobody ever really considered what those steps were. And so, I had a couple of little come to Jesus meetings or wake ups where, my plans weren't exactly panning out as I thought they would. And at one point I changed my major various times, about 7 times. But one of those directions led me to a seminary, which was an evangelical seminary. And I knew some people from my parents' church that were going there. And it was a very interesting experience. I would say that the classes that appealed to me the most were world religions and world history classes. And I started to make the connections that Aldous Huxley referred to as the perennial philosophy. And so the truths that are embedded in each of the major religions, that has to deal more with the archetypal energies and more of the concepts than the actual story. And I think that people get caught in the myth instead of understanding the myth as for what it is. And it was in this seminary that I would say I lost my religion. And that doesn't happen overnight. That's a process of, you start to objectively evaluate your life, your paradigm, your experiences, what you believe. And it's a gradual process. I think it's that process of awakening in many ways and assuming personal responsibility that, nobody can save me. I have to save myself. So that was at least my understanding. And there was another formative experience that had to do with the end of a relationship. And it was at that point where I was about 25 years old, and I just realized, wow, I don't know what I believe. I don't know why I believe what I believe, but I had been studying marketing and advertising. And what was the most interesting for me during this time was the unconscious decision-making process that people made. And that is what led me into psychology, which led me into hypnosis, NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and a lot of other crazy things.
And you're going to share some of this craziness with us today.
Yeah. So,
wow, that's a powerful story. And I can completely relate. I went to a Catholic college, and it was in my, theology class where I lost my religion. So very similar. It's funny how when you're surrounded by it, you think it's going to get stronger. But for those of us who I think are on this path, it's when it all kind of comes crashing down in the best way.
Yeah.
So the title of this interview is Defining the Value of Your Values. So should we go ahead and pull up the slides that you made for us?
Sure. I might have actually updated the name without telling you, but that's fine.
Oh, that's fine. We'll see what the new name is.
Let's see what it is. We'll see if it makes sense. So I'm just going to keep my screen open here.
Perfect.
How does that look?
Yeah, it looks great.
All right. So I switched it from defining to measuring.
I like that.
It's a very subjective manner of doing so. So let's dive into this. What has value? And we could look at the this image here of a couple holding hands. We can see marriage or wedding rings, and the assumption behind this image is that there is a wedding that's taking place. And so we could ask ourselves, in this specific context, what has value? The rings, they have intrinsic value, but I would say that, somebody else would say the relationship has value. The institution of marriage has value. To the photographer, this photo has value. So we can zoom all the way out of this perspective, but some of the things that are intrinsic in terms of defining what has value, it's something it's an experience. It doesn't necessarily have to be a tangible thing, but it's irreplaceable. It's useful, it's scarce, it's finite, and then it's also ultimately defined by our perceptions. And so there's a values paradox that happens. So for example, if you were to go to a grocery store and you were to buy, a little half liter of water, it cost you maybe, depending on the grocery store, but 50 cents to $1, give or take, right?
Sure.
And if you were to take this chest of gold and have it assessed on the marketplace, it might be worth, maybe $50,000, $100,000. I don't know, give or take based upon the weight. But if you are dying of thirst in the desert, you would gladly exchange all of that gold for that bottle of water. So we're talking about when something has value, we're looking at different aspects of it. One of those features is the exchange value. If you were to take something like gold or jewelry or money and exchange it or make a trade with it, we're talking about a future exchange. But if it's something that has use value, that's a very specific one-time application. And then either way you look at that, there's an opportunity cost. So if you're dying of thirst in the desert and you trade the chest of gold for the water, you lost the chest of gold, but you get to live. If you don't make that trade, you keep the gold, but you die. So it's really crazy sounding, but we are making these kind of value judgments on a daily basis, but most of the time they're happening unconsciously. And so one of the things that we need to look at, and if I'm looking up here, if you can see me, I've got a double screen, so I'm also reading my notes, so I'm not,
no worries.
I'm not channeling over here. Don't worry about that. So So we could look at, something that has less value. It's readily available. It's
Mm.
common.
Mm.
It exists in plenty. It's
Mhm.
typically inexpensive, and it has multiple uses. And then something that has more value, it's scarce, it's rare, it's unique, it's expensive, and it has a specific use. And then overall, the meta value is that there's subjective reasoning applied to this. I value something. I might value a teddy bear because I love it, I want it, it reminds me of my childhood, whatever it might be. It has intrinsic value to me.
Mm.
So one of the things that value also contains within it is the pain of potential loss.
Mm.
So anytime that we look at, we can look at the major categories in our lives: health, wealth, relationships, and spirituality.
Mm.
If we are losing our health, all of a sudden there's that potential pain of, I might die, or this really hurts, or, I might not be able to walk, whatever it is. When a relationship ends, there's that rupture and something is changing and it hurts. And it challenges us. What do we value? Sometimes we have to make that value decision of, my life is going this way, or I have these certain principles that I live by, and I've done my best to make sure that I'm living by these, but my partner in this relationship is not in agreement or chooses to go a different direction. And at that point, you have to choose between your values, your principles, or going in the direction of your partner. And so those are some really massive situations to address or to consider. The other one is, foreclosure sign, for example, the loss of a house. Well, when you make a financial investment, it's something that is not just money, but it's the energy or the opportunity cost used to access or to obtain that money that's then used to exchange value so that you can obtain something different. So this leads us to values. What are values? There's a full list of them. We could talk about courage, passion, bravery, compassion, bliss, love. Values are words that trigger an emotional response, that trigger a physiological response with us. For example, tell me the first value that comes to your mind. It could be anything.
Integrity.
What's that?
Integrity.
Integrity. All right. And then what's the second value?
Strength.
Okay. Can you tell me both of those words, but then emote the value tonally?
So I have to say them again with more feeling?
Say the feeling through the word.
Integrity.
Yeah.
Strength.
See? One is like deeper,
Yeah.
more powerful, very solid. The other one is just abrupt. Boom. Strength.
Yeah. Wow. I had never thought of that. Wow.
We do that a lot. And that's the gift of skilled orators, is they're able to emote the values or emote the emotions through the words that they're using, the language that they're using. So everything that we're doing in life comes down to value sorts. And this is the basis behind the decisions that we're making. So we are perpetually at the crossroads the entirety of our lives. We're making decisions. And here's the biggest challenge. What if, and this is what I personally believe, but what if everything in your life is the result of a chain reaction of your current values, or what's led up to be your current values? So we make these decisions. In order to be congruent and consistent with our decisions, we make more decisions. And if we don't have a specific sort of alignment or clarity in terms of our values, then we get so far off track. And that's how people wake up one day and they're like, oh my God, I'm in this situation. I don't know how the hell I got here. How do I extract myself from this? Well, the origin was probably, a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20, 50 years back. I mean, this is that part of being your own psychologist or personal history librarian or historian, and going back and reviewing what were the significant emotional events that happened in my life, and how do I go and heal those so that I can change the course of the ship of my life. As we talked about earlier, when you and I were just talking, before this call, we were talking about finite resources. And as far as I understand, we've got two measures of energy in a way. We've got time and we have money. And these are two finite resources. So we all have a finite amount of time on this planet or during our lifetime. We also have a finite amount of currency or money to work with. Now, both of these can be increased. You can increase your money, but it comes at an opportunity cost, right? Going back to that, you've got to develop a trade, you've got to develop something of value, you've got to study something. So there's that exchange that happens. And then with time, we can use it more effectively. We can become a better steward of our time. And, we can see like misappropriated time value. It's a kids that are playing video games versus a kid that spends that time, or a significant, it doesn't even have to be all of that time. It could be a significant amount of that time. If the average kid's playing 2 hours of video games 5 days a week, 10 hours a week, well, what if you cut that down to, or she cut it down to 2 hours a week and 8 hours of music practice? Totally different outcomes.
Yes.
So the next thing, and this is probably very appropriate regarding the day, it's February 14th, Valentine's Day.
It is today.
So, misappropriated money value. So there is something that I believe happens at a psychological level when we know when we spend money or money is spent on us and it has a connotation of worth. So it's either it's a direct statement, perhaps, but it's subtle, but it's a statement that says, I am worth something. So being that it is Valentine's Day, some people might be going out to dinner tonight. And if their significant other takes them to a fast food restaurant, the question might go, what am I worth?
Yes.
So, and of course, there's, political correctness and, all kinds of different ways to rationalize it. And, it shouldn't be that way, but we still do it.
Yes, you do.
It just happens. It's part of our nature. And so there's this pain point that happens when we spend an amount of money. And this is something that also comes up with wedding rings too, there's that pain point of, if it doesn't cost just that amount that's painful, then it doesn't have that worth. And it's very relative. It's very subjective. And there's so many factors that play into this, but we're often misappropriating the money value. And instead of, making the investment in all areas of our life that would be equal to eating at fine cuisine or eating at a nice restaurant, we're spending less trying to pay the fast food price for the areas of our life that are most important. And your unconscious mind is picking this up going, oh, well, that's not important. That's not important. That's not important. And so here we are.
Oh my gosh.
Our lives are the sum total of what we've assigned value to.
Yes. Okay. So I think can you say that one more time? Because I really think I want to drive this home. I think this is so vitally important.
We say to ourselves, we possibly say to other people that we value certain areas of our life in a way that you would pay the price to go eat at a fine restaurant. But the reality is you're trying to make shortcuts. You're being cheap. You're paying the price, or you're only willing to give a little bit, essentially the fast food price for the things that you believe to be, or you say to be, are valuable to you. So my example with this, and we talked about this earlier, I have 2 gym memberships, and I live in Santiago, Chile, so prices are a little bit different here. The medium income's a lot lower, but one gym membership, it's like a chain gym, like a 24-hour fitness Chilean style. It costs me about $20 a month, and I might use it a couple of times a month. $20 a month is, yeah, sure, it's real money, but it's not painful money. On the other hand, I go to this little beat up, shitty hole-in-the-wall gym with a fitness trainer, and this guy is brutal. Like I barely walk out of the place. I go at least 4 times a week because I pay real money for it. It costs me about $125 a month to do it. And so that's not a a massive amount of money, but in my health category, my fitness category, for that one class, that one area that I know that's going to get me the results, if I just show up and do it, all I have to do is show up and do it, be present and do it. I need that motivation, because at that price point, it's not significant money, but it's real money. And if I don't go for a couple of days, I feel guilty. So I get leverage over myself by investing in something that I know to be good for me. So I pay a premium so that my mind, my unconscious mind says, this is valuable. When it starts to be, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock at night or in the afternoon, I'm thinking, okay, I've got to go to do this. It's going to be a brutal hour. Sometimes it's 30 minutes and I'm just dead. Yeah. But whatever it is, I've categorized it so that my reticular activating system says, boom, it's time. You go. You said this is valuable. Let's go. And so that brings me to reticular activating system. It's a part of our unconscious mind. For example, I'm sure you've had this experience when you see a pair of cute shoes and you're like, oh my God, I love these. I'm going to go buy them. And you buy them. And then everywhere you look, you see other women wearing the same shoes.
Oh my gosh, I do this with cars all the time. Yeah.
So it's not that those cars or those shoes or the vacation to Brazil or whatever it is, it's not that those things didn't exist. It's just that you weren't sorting for them. And so your reticular activating system essentially tells you, this is the most important thing to me, or this is very relevant. So whatever topic it could be, that's what you're going to start to sort for. And it doesn't mean that the other ones don't exist, but it's almost like you have tunnel vision. Your unconscious mind is like, oh, this is important, so we're just going to give you this and this and this and this, and show you all of these examples. And so this is a great way, understanding this. The question then becomes, how do you identify and align your values, and then trigger your reticular activating system so that it's constantly giving you that feedback that, yes, we're on track. This is important. This might be painful, but you value it, so you're willing to do it. And so tying in the story, the pain and the gift of value motif, we can look at fairy tales. We can look at what was it? I'm blanking on the name here, but the
Princess and the Frog.
The Frog Prince, or the Princess and the Frog. Yeah. So, she has to exchange a kiss in order to get her golden ball back.
Yes.
Mariel has to give up her voice in order to win the prince. Aladdin has to give, there's a lot of programming in there. Aladdin has to give up, he has to free the genie, because that way only when he does that can he authentically receive love without having to impose his will upon Jasmine.
Yes.
Ophelia in Pan's Labyrinth, she has to give up the gift or the sacrifice of a drop of blood of an innocent in order to save her baby brother's life. And so we have this motif, and it exists in our fairy tales. It exists in religion. You could say Christianity's motif about that. It's a sacrifice of one life for the lives of many. And so we see this happening, and it ties in directly to that concept of the values. What value do your values have? Are you willing to sacrifice something to gain access to something that is greater and more valuable? It's that opportunity cost. And the only way to really define your values is to structure them accordingly. And this is a hierarchy of neurological levels, according to an individual by the name of Robert Dilts. And essentially, as we look at the top of this pyramid, on the far left column, we can see spirituality, identity, values and beliefs, capabilities, behaviors, and environment. And for people that are in are light workers, quote unquote, and kind of the context behind this program, it has to do with wealth and adding value. So often our focus is on everyone else. That's the purpose. And we forget ourselves. We don't place value on ourselves. And so we're seeking to offer that fine dining experience, but we're paying the price of fast food for what we believe to be valuable, because we're out of alignment. We're out of, we're incongruent in these areas. So, spirituality has to do with our purpose. Identity has to do with our permission. Values and beliefs has to do with our mission. Capabilities is our map, our plan, our strategy. behaviors are our actions, and then the environment is what creates the opportunities. There are countless opportunities because the world and life is full of problems. All you have to do is look around, and there's going to be countless problems to solve. And so once you structure this information and you define it, you sort it out, because it's like, how do you know the difference in value between a rock and a diamond? I mean, you could have a bucket full of rocks and one single precious diamond. And your unconscious mind, without that connotation, could look at them and go, okay, well, they're just chunks of carbon. You know, it's like they're both essentially the same, but one has value and one doesn't. Mm-hmm. So how do you trigger that in your life? Well, the way to do it is you can do it through time. You can invest a tremendous amount of time in it. You can repeat it, almost like an athlete would, or anybody that's dedicated to their art or profession. They rehearse it. And so they live in this world of their specialty. And so everywhere they go, they're looking through the lens of that specialty, and that's triggering their reticular activating system, RAS. Or the other way to do it is with the other currency in life. We have two things that we spend. We have three, but they're kind of the same. You can spend or save money and time, or energy. And so money and time, well, money is just energy. It's just an agreed upon way of exchanging energy or perceived value. Mm-hmm. And time, it's just the bookends. It's that scope of frequency. So when something happens. So when you put a lot of money into something, then your reticular activating system says, hey, this is worth it. This must be very important because it's painful, because you're going through opportunity costs. And so the challenge within all of this for myself, for you, for anybody that's listening, is to become very clear. Go back to structuring your values and get clarity on, your purpose, your permission, your mission, et cetera, and then come back and go, if I value something, what is one step that I can do? What is something that gives my unconscious mind, my reticular activating system, the clearest message, the clearest signal that goes right to that pain point and says, this is valuable because it hurts a little. And what hurts more is if I don't get it. So can you imagine that? It's like investing just enough to have it be somewhat barely painful and then losing it all. That's like horrible. Mm-hmm. It's like double pain.
It's double pain.
But if you invest enough that you're so far invested into it that you're willing to give your all and you totally value it, you're probably not going to lose it.
You're not going to lose it. Oh, wow. I'm so blown away. And that journey that you just took us on, it's so refreshing I think it's great to see it from such a, scientific perspective, to really bring it down to your reticular activating system. This is actually what's operating in our brains at all times. It reminds me of the story of the elephant and the rider. You've got the rider who wants to go a certain place, but the elephant, being your subconscious, really is who decides where you're going to go. And
Sure.
To motivate both is key. And that's what you're doing by spending that time and money and energy on the very things that you want more of and that you value more.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a process of getting leverage over yourself and to almost make it painful. And there's that old adage, put your money where your mouth is.
Yes.
I think it applies to everything. If you want to be better at something, or if you want to get something done, or you want to be effective, stop making shortcuts.
Yes.
If you can't do it yourself, pay the price that the professional charges. That's the hardest thing. There's an example that is kind of close to home for me. But when I was growing up, I watched this guy that would mow his yard, and he would spend probably 6 to 8 hours mowing a yard every weekend. And it made me wonder, what, for me, that's 6 or 8 hours doing something that I personally don't like to do. And start to add up that time. That's 30 hours a week, or 30 hours a month, 360 hours a year, 3,600 hours over the course of a decade. What else could you have achieved? Who else could you have become doing that? So it's almost going with that concept of outsourcing the things that you don't like to do.
Yes.
Because you have to set a price on what your time is worth. What value does your time have? And start to look at it in the big picture and going, okay, if I can get leverage over myself, how much more money do I need to earn in order to pay somebody else, the fee to do something that I dislike doing, that takes my time? Because you could maybe I'm being a little short-sighted here, but as far as I perceive it, you could mow a lawn for 10 decades and never get much better at it. But if you practice an instrument, you learn a profession, you study something, you develop a new skill, over the course of a decade, you can become pretty damn good at it. So stop being cheap with the things that you say are important to you.
I love that. Oh, wow. This was such an amazing journey, just like pictorially and just I'm loving this because it really breaks it down for us, helps us to see exactly where we're shortchanging ourselves because we're trying to be cheap. Yeah. And I think that is absolutely something that our culture teaches us to value. And at the end of the day, we are undervaluing ourselves.
Yeah, it's the short-sightedness of the microwave generation and the belief that you can have it all. I believe that you can have it all. And I also believe that there's a sequence within that.
Yes.
You've got in nerd language, like video games, you have to level up. So you get really good at doing something, and then that allows you to scale up and you do something else. And you scale up and you do something else. You scale. And so you've got to find that leverage point and go, okay, what is the biggest obstacle? For some people it might be their health. For some people it might be their wealth. So if it's your health, well, do what it takes to get to become fit, or to enhance your health. Pay an expert to guide you, and pay enough that it's painful if you don't do it.
Yes.
It's going to be painful either way. I think what's more painful is going out 10 or 20 years and having not done anything. The same thing for a profession or for skills. When I was first getting into coaching in 2007, I had some different beliefs. And one of the things that I tried to do to save money was become a jack of all trades.
Yes.
And I became the jack of all trades and the master of none.
Yes.
I learned web design. I learned all of these different things. And eventually I was able to, put them together and I offer marketing services and consulting and I also do coaching. And so I've got, my hands in a bunch of different areas and arenas. But looking back, it was the long road. And it was a long road because I was willing to pay the fast food price to get the job done so that I could offer that fine dining experience price in my services.
Right.
It doesn't work out that way.
No.
So valuing your values and having a lot of clarity about what value your values have, and then understanding how to get leverage. You've got the sequence, apply some pain to it.
Yes, and I love that you're applying this very principle to the way that you're offering the pay structure for your free gift, which is also an opportunity for people to donate. And it's called the Empowered Muse. And I love that title, obviously. But just the idea that you're encouraging people who do participate. You're offering the first 3 modules of 9 for free to
all of them.
All of them for free.
It's 9 modules. So
awesome.
It's full of symbolism. Let me just give it an overview. Yeah. So the concept that came to me over, it was a while back, and it was after having studied a fair amount of mythology and mysticism. And there's a very common theme that's called the triple goddess or the triune goddess, which is the 3 phases of womanhood. And I was in my earlier 20s when I came across this, and I thought it was fascinating at that time to watch how, because I was working on a men's program of all things, but I was comparing and contrasting, going, what is the difference? What is the difference between a rite of passage for women? Is it necessary? Or a rite of passage for men? And why don't we have one? Why didn't I go through a rite of passage as a man? What was that delineating factor when I went from boyhood into manhood? Have I still done it? It's like all these questions that come up. But I think, I could ask you, are you a woman? Oh yeah, obviously. How do you know?
I've had 2 kids. That's part of it.
Right. And so I think that for women, there are some biological experiences that make it a lot clearer. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the process is full or complete, but the triune goddess talks about the 3 phases, and they relate it to the lunar phases. It's the waxing moon, which is the maiden phase, the full moon, which is the mother phase, and then the waning moon, which is the wise woman or the crone phase. And when you look at this, a lot of the tension, a lot of the dissatisfaction or the uncertainty that I see in my clients' lives when I'm talking with females is they're out of sync with those phases, and they're placing more value, they're placing societal value on one of those phases typically more than the others. And it's that process of moving through those phases with elegance and grace. And so the thing that I want to be very clear about is, obviously I'm a guy, and and I'm not interested in telling women how to be women or telling women what to do. And so what I'm providing here is creating the experiences that if I were to ever have a daughter, these are the resources or the understandings that I would want her to have access to if I was here or gone, because I believe that they are time tested. These are, traditions that are not limited by time. And a lot of it's focused upon healing, understanding oneself, and then creating clarity and getting leverage on oneself. And so the concept that I thought would be really fun to play with, and it's a little bit of a social experiment, but it's more so it's the person who participates, and it's for women. If you're a man or you identify as a man or what, I don't care. Go do it. You can access this program. And what I believe you have the opportunity to do here is to take a specific area of your life and define what you value it at. And you can go through the entire course for free, and you'll get something out of it, or you might not get anything. But I know for a fact that the moment that you trigger your reticular activating system and you find your pain point and you say, you know what, this change or this integration is worth this much to me, that's when you remember it. That's when it starts to pop up in your daily, conversations or your daily experiences. And you're reminded, when you're at that crossroads, do I explode or do I take a deep breath and practice some other resources? And so it has the resources that I've accumulated over the past 15 years or so in terms of peak performance and self-awareness. And so it's going to be a very powerful program, and I look forward to seeing everyone involved in it.
I love that. And it sounds so powerful and it's so valuable for everyone who's watching today. I think that, your expertise and just your professionalism and your servant heart is very, very apparent. So I'm so excited to be able to share you with everyone today, and definitely take advantage of getting access to the Empowered Muse and learning from Michael and all of his wealth of wisdom. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you.
I wish we could keep going, but it's more than enough time.
Another day.
Well, not more than enough, but it's beyond our time. But that's a beautiful thing, because I really appreciate what you've shared with us today. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you for the opportunity.